She was pale, still, and holding that little blue passport like it was the last thing tethering her to reality. No production crew. No Sumit. No farewell. Just Jenny walking through the Delhi airport alone, after more than a decade of fighting for her place in a life that might not have ever really included her. And within hours, the fan base exploded. Because this wasn't a quick vacation. Not a visa issue, not even about health or family. According to multiple people present that day, this sudden exit was triggered by something Jenny saw, just before heading to the airport. Messages. Allegedly with photos. Allegedly showing Sumit at a family event that looked too familiar, too ceremonial, and far too similar to the last time Jenny found out he'd been married behind her back. Let that sink in. A woman who left her entire life in the U.S., who battled one of the most stubborn families reality TV has ever filmed, who practically begged to be accepted just as she was, may have discovered again that she'd been kept out of conversations about her own marriage. It didn't start loud. It started quiet. Jenny had been planning to leave for a short visit to the States. That's the version people were initially told. But according to 3 friends, the minute she opened those messages, everything changed. And it wasn't just what she saw. It was what it confirmed. She wasn't crazy all those times she felt left out. She wasn't making it up when she said things fell off. She wasn't imagining the distance growing between her and Sumit over the past 6 months. Everything that had seemed like small cracks, every moment he flinched when asked about the future, every time she was excluded from family functions, every time his phone buzzed and he stepped out to take the call, suddenly looked like pieces of a puzzle that had never included her from the beginning. And this next part is where things get heavy. Because Jenny's seen this exact script before. Years ago, Sumit's secret arranged marriage nearly broke her. And back then, he sobbed, apologized, promised it was all in the past. Promised she was his only future. What happens when those promises start looking recycled? When the person you've defended again and again starts looking like someone else's husband again? Of course, people are already defending Sumit, saying, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe the event wasn't even a wedding. But then the question becomes, why didn't Jenny know about it? Why was it happening separately from her? If you're building a marriage together, why are you still having family conversations that don't involve your wife? They were supposed to be partners, equals. She gave up everything for this man, her home, her family, her comfort, and frankly, her self-respect more times than the audience could count. If this was just a cultural misunderstanding, why did she leave for good, looking like she'd aged 5 years in one afternoon? She looked numb, not angry, not shocked. That kind of silence doesn't come from one bad text. It comes from watching history repeat and realizing you believed a lie twice. And if it's true that Sumit was part of another ceremonial gathering, whether symbolic or not, then this isn't just betrayal. This is proof Jenny may never have been the main character in her own love story. Here's the brutal part. This wouldn't be the first time Jenny found out she was loving a man who already had one foot in someone else's wedding photo. Fans remember that episode like it aired yesterday. Jenny, blindsided, sitting on camera with tears running down her face, as Sumit admitted he'd been married off by his family in secret. Legally. Fully. Married. And she hadn't known a thing. The betrayal back then wasn't just the marriage. It was the extent of the lie. How long it went on. The fact that Jenny had been living with him, eating dinner with him every night, while his wife existed on the other side of his phone in his silence. And still, she stayed. She forgave. Not once, but over and over again. Because he swore that relationship was over, that she'd never have to go through that humiliation again. Fast forward to now. She's at that airport again. But this time, she's not crying publicly. she's emotionally blank. And maybe that's even worse. Because when you're done having emotions for someone, that's when you know something has broken beyond fixing. Let's rewind the timeline. Fans started noticing subtle changes months ago. Jenny stopped defending Sumit on social media. Public appearances dropped. When she did show up, she looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. The bubbly woman who used to gush about Indian spices and her filmy love story now avoided relationship questions altogether. On the show, conversations with Sumit got shorter. Tense. And what about the family? The same ones who told her to her face that she was too old, too foreign, too embarrassing to marry their son? The same conservative parents who once called the relationship shameful suddenly got quiet. No explosive banishments, no crying scenes, just awkward smiles and passive nods. Did their sudden silence mean peace or pretense? Because when people stop resisting loudly, some viewers, especially Desi ones, know to look out for quiet backroom deals. Cultural approval doesn't always look like a group hug. Sometimes, it's about making other plans without ever saying them out loud. For years, Jenny believed that conquering their opposition was the hardest part. That if the family stopped yelling, the love could finally breathe. But what if the noise stopped, only because she no longer mattered in the conversation? What if the biggest red flag wasn't anger, but the awkward calm that replaced it? And now, fans are watching old episodes like crime scene footage, replaying scenes with fresh eyes. That time, Sumit hesitated when the topic of kids came up. The forced smile at dinner with his parents. The long pause before every reassurance. How many moments were packaged for audience comfort while real pressure built backstage? Because here's the hardest question of all. What if the entire storyline we were sold, acceptance, resolution, love-conquering culture, was just edited peace? And if Jenny's been standing in emotional quicksand for this long, did she ever truly get the whole truth? Or just the version that kept her from leaving too soon? Everyone wanted to believe the hardest part was over. That once his parents stopped screaming, once the temple wedding happened, once Jenny was finally accepted on paper and in her bangles, peace would follow. But it didn't. Not really. Because even when families stop saying no out loud, they don't always stop planning. And Sumit's family, according to people familiar with the situation, never fully let go of the big three: legacy, grandchildren, and who's going to look after our son when we're gone. The elephant in this storyline has always been the age gap. Jenny is decades older than Sumit. And while she's never apologized for that, and shouldn't have to, the reality is his family saw it less as love without limits, and more like a ticking clock. One they thought she couldn't stop. Fans have long suspected that children were a silent deal breaker between Jenny and the entire Singh family. Now, the whispers are louder. Sources close to extended relatives claim there were conversations happening off camera. Alleged talks of surrogacy, alleged mentions of young women more suitable for parenthood. And if those conversations were actively happening while Jenny was still living in that house, making chai and cleaning the kitchen like a loyal wife, the emotional betrayal isn't just sharp, it's strategic. This wasn't just about love anymore. It started looking like a side-by-side arrangement. Public devotion over here, private pressure over there. Two lives, two paths, hardly ever crossing. And maybe Sumit thought he could balance both. Maybe he believed he could hold on to the woman he loved, while still dragging a safety net behind him for his family to approve of. But that's not how relationships work. You don't build a future with someone while making plans that cancel them out in the background. Here's where empathy gets real, because Jenny put herself in a country that questioned her every move. She couldn't speak the language fluently. She didn't have local family, every grocery store run, every visa renewal. She did alone, waiting for affection that came in bursts, rarely in certainty. People mocked her plenty, said she looked desperate, acted naive. But Maybe what looked like desperation was actually resilience. Maybe she was holding a relationship under marathon stress that would have broken most people in the first season. And now fans are asking the hard question they avoided for years. Was this always going to be temporary? Was Jenny ever seen as a final destination? Or was she just the waiting room? Because if family expectations were quietly shaping Sumit's real next steps, and if Jenny was unaware of that script, then her pain isn't the fallout of one mistake. It's the crash of something that was never going to be built for her in the first place. And if that's true, then this was never a heartbreak. It was a slow, quiet exit from a life that was only loaned to her, never promised. Silence, in some breakups, is a neutral space, a pause, a breather. But in this case, it's getting louder than any confrontation ever could. Because Sumit hasn't said a single word publicly. Not to deny the whispers, not to clarify the rumors, not to show support for the woman he claimed he'd go against the world for. And honestly, from that silence, fans are hearing everything. This isn't new behavior. If you trace the history of their relationship through episodes, social media clips, interviews, it's a tilt pattern. One side always asking for clarity, the other side fogging it up. When the first marriage came out, Sumi didn't tell Jenny. The court did. When his parents rejected her, he asked her to wait it out. When timelines changed, he said it was stress. When engagement delays mounted, he claimed he was trying to protect her from drama. What if this isn't timidity? What if it's a tool? Delay, avoid, minimize, say less so no one can hold you to anything later. And now, whether intentional or not, the pattern is repeating. In the face of what could be another betrayal, another possible emotional ambush, Sumit is silent. No photo posts, no stories, no joint update, not even a throwback. The last trace of Jenny on his Instagram was months ago, and nothing since. Pressed for answers, he's vanished into polite disappearing. It's giving damage control without the damage acknowledgement, and fans are left refreshing pages that don't answer back. Meanwhile, Jenny's face says more than any statement ever could. Something shifted. Forget recent footage for a second. Go back months. She used to beam when talking about her life in India. She told reporters she was finally settled, used cheerful emojis, shared meals she'd cooked with Sumit. Then, silence. Sparse posts. Follow-up questions ignored. Her tone inside interviews softened, then hardened. And finally, it disappeared. Watch closely, and you see it. She stopped correcting rumors. She stopped dismissing doubt. She stopped defending Sumit, not out of pride, but reportedly out of sheer emotional depletion. Jenny didn't flip overnight. She faded. The way people do when they're starting to believe the confusion might not be temporary. And when people say, but she didn't look heartbroken, they're missing something deeper. This wasn't pain caused by a sudden blow. It was caused by months, maybe years, of tiny cuts. The kind that don't spark arguments but still leave bruises. That's the kind of emotional pattern people aren't trained to notice. But she lived it. In that house. With the man who once told cameras he'd rather die than lose her, now not even offering a public sentence. Viewers who have followed this journey since day one are connecting dots backwards. They remember her crying while wearing bangles during the secret wedding reveal. The heartbreak when Sumit's mom told her to act like a nice auntie instead of a wife. The way she gripped his hand in front of officials, needing reassurance, and getting vague, half-promises in return. The crypto body language that told fans more than words ever could. And here it is again. A moment that requires clarity, and she gets silence instead. So the question becomes, what happened right before that airport moment. What did she see before walking out of the home she decorated with the man she protected? Was it just a message? A notification from someone who'd seen Sumi elsewhere? A photo? Screenshots? Because whatever it wasn't small. That much is painfully obvious. You don't uproot a life like that unless something punches the air out of your chest. This wasn't a planned break. This was someone done. And it's not just that she left. It's how she left. Quietly. With dignity. No press release. No live stream sobbing. No distractions. That look on her face said one thing loud and clear. She was giving up on ever getting answers. And finally, choosing peace where closure failed her. The irony? She stayed through disasters other people would have sprinted from. Hundreds of thousands of people called her names, questioned her judgment, mocked her for staying. And yet, she stayed because she believed in the version of Sumit that convinced her love could beat all odds. That's how strong her loyalty was. So when someone like Jenny finally walks out, not running, not fighting, just shutting the door behind her, it means every attempt to save the relationship already happened. She didn't leave because of one message. She left because the man she believed in either hid too much or said too little for too long. Now fans are split. Some say he loved her, but was never strong enough to shield her from the lifelong pull of parental obligation. Others think he used silence as a strategy, let her feel safe while keeping Plan B in the back pocket. And there's that uncomfortable third group, quietly wondering if both are true. That he loved her and loved himself a little more. And what we're seeing now? It's the emotional bill coming due. When you push discomfort down too many times, eventually, it comes back up, louder, hungrier, with questions no silence can protect you from anymore. Because if Jenny saw what we think she saw, if she discovered anything close to another familial arrangement in play, another woman prepped as a surrogate, another path being paved behind her back, then this isn't just a second heartbreak. This is a confirmation that her presence wasn't protection from betrayal. It might have been cover for it. It always comes back to one word. Children. Not love, not loyalty, not commitment. For years, the giant shadow hanging over Jenny and Sumit's relationship wasn't their cultural differences or even their age gap. It was the unspoken but ever-present expectation that somewhere, somehow, Sumit would eventually give his parents a grandchild. And now, the rumors are no longer quiet. Allegedly, conversations have been circulating off camera, entirely outside Jenny's awareness, about the possibility of surrogacy. Not hypothetical chats, not one-off dinner table what-ifs, real discussions. And allegedly, a younger woman was involved, not romantically, but practically, as in someone who could carry a child. Now this is where some fans start defending him again, saying maybe it's just cultural pressure. Maybe Sumit's family was exploring options, hoping to bring their son into the fatherhood lane, the only way they accept. But if we're being honest, how do you explore that route without involving your literal wife? This is where the jagged line between tradition and betrayal cuts deep. Family expectations are powerful, yes, but lying by omission is still deception. If Jenny was never part of the surrogacy talks, if she never knew this was even a topic being unpacked, then what role was she ever meant to play? Think about the setup. Here's a woman who has been labeled an outsider, a scandal, and a shame on national television in front of millions. She still showed up. She learned the customs. She obeyed the family rules even when they belittled her on camera. And still, she fought to be seen. She agreed to live with them, cooked for them, waited years to be legally accepted. So, what was all of it for if, behind closed doors, Sumit was allegedly still participating in alternative legacy planning? Here's where things get uncomfortable. The contrast between what was shown on TV and what might have actually been going on behind the scenes might be massive. Viewers were handed a story of eventual peace. The family reluctantly came around, the elders softened, the drama faded. But that's how surface stories work. Smile for the camera, stay silent for the rest. The more this story unfolds, the more people are questioning if Jenny was ever truly seen as the long-term wife. Or was she more like a love sabbatical? Something Sumit fought for emotionally, but not structurally? It's one thing to win a war with your family. It's another thing entirely to rig the truce conditions. Some viewers argue that Sumit must have felt stuck, caught between decades of cultural programming and genuine love for Jenny, that he didn't know how to balance both worlds. But that argument only holds water until silence starts looking like strategy, until protecting your family starts looking like detaching your partner from critical decisions about the future you're supposed to be building together. This is what real betrayal looks like. Not always yelling or cheating or gaslighting. Sometimes it's every important moment taking place without you. Quietly. In rooms you were never invited into. Decisions made around your existence, not with your consent. And here's the worst part. This wasn't out of the blue. Jenny had always been honest about her limitations. She couldn't give Sumit children. That was clear from day one. So if that dream was never going away, if parenthood was a non-negotiable part of his family's long game, was this alternate plan always sitting in the back of his mind? Was Jenny being loved or managed? And fans have started drawing lines in the sand. One camp believes he truly did love her, but over time, the weight of parental pressure broke something inside him. That maybe he thought he found a workaround. Keep Jenny emotionally close and keep the family legacy alive through a technicality. But others see this as the long con. Not out of cruelty, but out of convenience. That Sumit figured out how to buy himself time, avoid public backlash, dodge direct confrontation, and delay the fallout. That his real strategy wasn't to decide, but to keep both options alive until one quietly walked away. This might be what we're watching now. Not love dying, but trust choking under the weight of things left unsaid. Because if your partner's making life-changing decisions without even inviting you into the conversation, can we still call that trust? Or is it just elaborate silence hiding behind cultural expectations? She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She didn't call attention to herself or make a scene. Jenny Slatten, the woman who once cried on cam begging to stay in India, who clung to the idea of love with the stubbornness of someone who thought this was her last shot at it, that woman walked through the airport without a word. People who saw her that day say the same thing. She looked finished. Not angry. Not devastated. Just emotionally vacant. It was the expression of someone who stopped expecting an answer a long time ago. The weight on her face said this wasn't about one moment, but about a history of moments building up like sandbags around her heart. And it's exactly that silence that hit different. After all she experienced on this journey, public shame, rejection by his family, mocking online, endless reminders about her age, her nationality, her place, you'd expect, when she finally left, it would be explosive, dramatic, raw. But the quiet told the real story. This wasn't a woman reacting to a new betrayal. This was a woman who'd been slowly bleeding, emotionally, out of public view, for years. And whatever she saw that day, whatever message popped up on her screen, whatever detail shattered her last piece of belief, it wasn't new pain. It was an old wound sliced back open. Think about who this woman was at the start. She left everything behind. Her daughters, her financial safety net, her language, her privacy, her dignity. And for what? A man she believed in. A story she told herself would end differently than everyone said it would. And truthfully, for a while, it looked like maybe she was right. She got the marriage. She got on Indian soil for good. She was calling herself a man's wife proudly after waiting nearly a decade for that title. She posted matching outfits, shared love selfies, defended Sumit relentlessly against fan criticism. She didn't just fight for this relationship. She lived inside it like it was the only place she had left. That's what makes the ending so devastating. Because now we're left wondering, was she the only one really believing in forever? A lot of people throw around the word loyalty. But Jenny built her identity around it. She stood by Sumit even when her own children were begging her to leave. She curled her life around his, made peace with customs that weren't hers, and forced herself to stay small in his family's eyes, just to hold on. And if the rumors are true, if behind the scenes Sumit was entertaining future plans that took all of her sacrifices for granted, then this wasn't a breakup. It was emotional abandonment that finally collapsed under silence. Maybe the most heartbreaking part of all is this. Jenny didn't leave asking for answers anymore. That ship sailed long ago. She left knowing she'd never get them. And more importantly, realizing she didn't need them anymore. When you stop needing clarity, it's because you've accepted you were never part of the real conversation. Her goodbye wasn't packed with drama because the drama had already eaten her alive year by year. A person doesn't walk away from a life like this unless they've already emotionally packed. The same woman who said she'd never go back to America did, without looking back. No announcement, no last romantic post, no closure selfies. That tells you everything. And fans? They're still debating it. Was this retreat or rebirth? Was she crushed or finally free? Because maybe all those explosive moments on screen weren't the real relationship drama. Maybe those fireworks were distractions. And the actual story was hiding in her face 2 months before she left, when she stopped smiling without explanation. What if Jenny's real goodbye didn't happen at the airport, but in all the quiet conversations she stopped trying to have, long before she ever boarded that plane? There's a cost to lying, and it's not always public. Sometimes it's private, quiet, accumulated in skipped explanations, dodged questions, eye contact that never quite holds. The price builds slowly, and when it hits, it doesn't look like rage. It looks like someone walking out of an airport with 2 bags and a decision that'll never be reversed. Jenny's exit wasn't a headline. It was a consequence. Not of one betrayal, but of years where the full truth never seemed to land on her side of the table. And Sumit? Whether he meant to manipulate or was always just trying to keep tension low, he's now in the wreckage of what happens when your choices finally outgrow your excuses. People keep calling Jenny naive. Let's clear that up. She wasn't naive. She chose to believe because she loved, fully, wrong or right. When family told her it would never work, she stayed. When producers questioned the power dynamic, she defended him. When the secrets came out, she cried and forgave. Again and again. But even the most forgiving heart has a door. And eventually, that door doesn't close in anger. It closes in peace. Jenny staying wasn't weakness. It was radical hope. But Jenny leaving? That was strength. Sumit, whether he realizes it yet or not, is now on the flip side of silence. Not the kind that protects him, but the kind that isolates. When people stop asking what happened, it's not because they've stopped caring. It's because they know nothing truthful is coming back. He may have thought she would wait forever, that she would keep defending him out of impulse, that her love was endless so long as she wanted the story to win. But trust isn't endless. It's finite. And when it runs out, it's not just status updates that get erased. It's the entire foundation. And let's be real, Jenny's story is a mirror for anyone who stayed too long in something fueled more by promise than progress. It's not foolish to hope, but it becomes painful when you realize the only person planning around that hope was you. Her walk through that airport wasn't a dramatic exit. It was accountability, wrapped in silence. It was someone who had finally given up on hearing the truth spoken out loud and decided to stop waiting for it. That's not defeat. That's dignity in motion. The relationship everyone said would never last didn't fail where they expected. It didn't collapse under family disapproval or cultural differences or age. It collapsed in the gap between being present and being honest. And maybe that's the real tragedy, that she fought everyone else, only to realize she might have needed protection from him the entire time. So where does this story go now? The fallout is public, but freedom? That part's private. And maybe Jenny finally gets to have that. Off camera. Because if Sumit built his future on secrecy and assumed she wouldn't notice, whose story was he really writing? If you thought this was a twist, wait until you see who Sumit has reportedly been spotted with since Jenny's departure. Because what comes next might not just rewrite the ending, but call the entire relationship into question. That breakdown is coming in my next video, and once you see it, there's no going back.